Colombia's election shock, a runoff that could redefine relations with America. Colombia is heading toward one of the most consequential elections in its modern history. A country long considered Washington's closest ally in South America is now deeply divided between two radically different visions of the future. On one side stands a hardline conservative outsider who openly admires Donald Trump and promises a fierce crackdown on crime. On the other is a left-wing senator determined to continue the political project of current President Gustavo Petro, focusing on social reforms and peace negotiations. Now, after a dramatic first round of voting, Colombia is headed to a high-stakes runoff election that could reshape not only the country's future, but also its relationship with the United States. This is more than just an election. It is a battle over security, economics, diplomacy, and the future direction of Latin America itself. Let's break down what happened, who the candidates are, and why the entire world is paying attention.
The election results that shocked Colombia. The first round of Colombia's presidential election delivered a surprise result. Right-wing candidate Abelardo de la Espriella emerged with roughly 44% of the vote, narrowly ahead of leftist Senator Iván Cepeda, who received around 41%. Since neither candidate crossed the 50% threshold required for an outright victory, Colombians will return to the polls for a runoff election on June 21. For many analysts, the outcome signaled a dramatic shift in public mood. Just a few years ago, Colombia elected its first left-wing president, Gustavo Petro, promising major reforms and a new approach to peace and social justice. But 4 years later, many Colombians appear frustrated by rising violence, economic uncertainty, and concerns about the government's ability to maintain security. The runoff now presents voters with two sharply contrasting paths. One promises tougher law enforcement and a return to aggressive security policies. The other argues that social inequality and decades of conflict cannot be solved through force alone. The choice facing Colombia could not be clearer. Who is Abelardo de la Espriella? Perhaps the biggest story of this election is the rapid rise of Abelardo de la Espriella, a lawyer and businessman with no traditional political background. He has positioned himself as an outsider, determined to shake up Colombia's political establishment. Known by supporters as the Tiger, de la Espriella has built his campaign around one central promise: security. He argues that Colombia's current approach toward armed groups, drug traffickers, and criminal organizations has failed. Solution? Hardline crackdown. Among his proposals are the construction of mega prisons, stronger military operations against criminal groups, and an end to negotiations with organizations involved in violence and drug trafficking. Many observers compare his style to El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele. Aggressive anti-gang policies dramatically reduced crime, also sparked concerns about civil liberties. Espriella has also drawn attention internationally because of his admiration for Donald Trump and his support among conservative voters seeking stronger ties with Washington. Supporters, he represents strength, order, and decisive leadership. Critics, he represents the risk of authoritarian politics.
The left's last stand, Iván Cepeda. Standing against de la Espriella is Iván Cepeda, a veteran senator and close ally of current President Gustavo Petro. Cepeda represents continuity with Colombia's first left-wing administration. Cepeda argues that Colombia's problems run deeper than crime alone. His campaign focuses on social reforms, expanded healthcare access, land redistribution, poverty reduction, and continued peace negotiations with armed groups. Supporters say these policies address the root causes of violence. They argue that decades of inequality and rural neglect have fueled instability and conflict across Colombia. Critics claim the government's total peace strategy has allowed criminal organizations to expand their influence and become stronger. Rising violence in several regions has become one of the biggest issues facing voters. The runoff election is therefore becoming a referendum on Petro's presidency itself. If Cepeda wins, Colombia will likely continue along the current path. If he loses, many of Petro's reforms could be reversed.
Why the United States is watching closely. What makes this election especially important is its potential impact on relations with the United States. For decades, Colombia has been one of America's most important strategic partners in Latin America. The two countries have worked together on security cooperation, anti-drug operations, trade, and regional stability. But relations became more complicated during President Petro's administration. Petro often criticized aspects of U.S. foreign policy and pushed for a different approach toward regional diplomacy. Now, if De La Espriella wins, analysts expect a significant shift. His tougher stance on crime and stronger alignment with conservative political movements could bring Colombia closer to Washington, particularly if Donald Trump continues influencing U.S. foreign policy discussions. Cepeda victory, meanwhile, would likely preserve Colombia's current emphasis on social reform, peace negotiations, and a more independent foreign policy approach. The United States, the outcome matters because Colombia remains a key player in regional security, migration issues, narcotics enforcement, relations with neighboring Venezuela.
The bigger Latin America trend. Colombia's election is not happening in isolation. Across Latin America, voters are increasingly turning toward leaders who promise strong action against crime, corruption, and economic instability. The rise of De La Espriella mirrors broader political trends seen elsewhere in the region. Many citizens have become frustrated with traditional political parties and are looking for outsiders who promise quick solutions to long-standing problems. At the same time, progressive movements remain influential and argue that social inequality remains the region's most pressing challenge. This broader ideological struggle is now playing out in Colombia. And because Colombia is one of Latin America's largest economies and most influential countries, the election's outcome could have ripple effects far beyond its borders. The first round is over, but the real battle is only beginning. On June 21, Colombians will choose between two dramatically different futures. One path promises tougher security, stronger law enforcement, and closer alignment with conservative political movements. The other promises continued social reforms, peace negotiations, and the continuation of Colombia's left-wing experiment. The result could redefine Colombia's future, could reshape relations with the United States. It could become one of the most important political stories in Latin America this year. The world is watching. Colombia is about to make a choice that could change everything. If you enjoyed this breakdown,